The carriage rattled to a stop in front of the most imposing mansion Eleanor Hartley had ever seen. Thornbury House rose 5 stories into the grey March sky, its white marble columns gleaming even through London's perpetual fog. The gardens stretched perfectly manicured across Belgrave Square, not a single leaf out of place. Eleanor's hands trembled as she smoothed her modest grey dress, the best she owned, though it had seen 3 years of careful mending. Before we begin, subscribe and leave a like. Your small gesture helps this story go further. Where are you listening from? Miss Hartley? A stern-faced woman in black appeared at the entrance. I'm Mrs. Dawson, head housekeeper. His Grace is expecting you. Eleanor followed her through hallways lined with portraits of Blackwood ancestors, their painted eyes seeming to judge her with every step. The house smelled of beeswax and old money, the kind of wealth Eleanor had once taken for granted before her father's investments failed and her fiancé abandoned her in front of half of London society. Wait here. Mrs. Dawson gestured to a chair outside an ornate oak door. The Duke will see you shortly. But it wasn't the Duke who appeared first. A small boy with dark curls and impossibly sad blue eyes peered around the corner. He couldn't have been more than 5, dressed in a miniature suit that looked too formal for a child. He stared at Eleanor without speaking. Hello, Eleanor said softly, kneeling to his level. You must be James. The boy's eyes widened slightly, but he said nothing. I'm Eleanor. I heard you like stories. Is that true? James gave the tiniest nod. Well, I know quite a few. Would you like to... James. The voice cut through the air like winter frost. Return to your rooms. Eleanor looked up and forgot how to breathe. The Duke of Thornbury stood in the doorway, and he was nothing like she'd imagined. Tall, broad-shouldered, with black hair and eyes the colour of a stormy sea. His face was all sharp angles and controlled power, handsome in a way that felt dangerous. He was perhaps 34, but grief had carved lines around his eyes that made him seem older. Now, James... The boy scurried away without a sound. Miss Hartley, come in. Eleanor rose on shaking legs and entered his study. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive mahogany desk, windows overlooking the gardens. The Duke moved behind his desk with the grace of a predator. Sit. She sat. He studied her in silence for what felt like an eternity, those grey-blue eyes cataloguing every detail. Eleanor forced herself to meet his gaze, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. Mrs. Dawson tells me you were governess to the Ashford children for 2 years. Yes, Your Grace. And before that? Eleanor's throat tightened. Before that, I was engaged to be married. His eyebrow lifted slightly. What happened? My father made poor investments. We lost everything. My fiancé felt this was sufficient reason to end our engagement. She kept her voice steady, refusing to show the wound that still ached. Publicly. Something flickered in the Duke's expression. Recognition, perhaps. Understanding. I don't need a governess who will coddle my son, he said. I need someone who understands that life is cruel. That disappointment is inevitable. Can you teach him that while still giving him reason to smile? The question caught her off guard. I believe, Your Grace, that understanding cruelty makes genuine kindness more precious. Your son has known enough darkness. He doesn't need more lessons in suffering. The Duke's fingers tightened on his desk. My wife died giving birth to him 5 years ago. James hasn't smiled since he was old enough to understand it was his fault. It wasn't his fault. The words came out sharper than Eleanor intended. Forgive me, Your Grace, but a child is never responsible for the circumstances of his birth. Tell that to society. Society is often wrong. Silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. You're hired, the Duke said abruptly. You'll start tomorrow. Mrs. Dawson will show you to your rooms. One more thing, Miss Hartley. I don't tolerate failure. If you cannot reach my son, you will not remain in this house. Do you understand? Perfectly, Your Grace. As she stood to leave, his voice stopped her. Miss Hartley, the man who abandoned you was a fool. Eleanor turned, but the Duke had already shifted his attention to the papers on his desk, dismissing her without another glance. 6 weeks later, Eleanor stood in the morning room watching James build a tower of wooden blocks, and realized she'd fallen in love with the small, serious boy. Not the romantic love that had destroyed her, but something fiercer, the protective instinct of someone who recognized a kindred wounded soul. What if it falls? James whispered, placing another block with exaggerated care. Then we'll build it again. That's the wonderful thing about towers, James. They can always be rebuilt. He looked up at her with those impossibly blue eyes. Even if they fall many times? Especially then. Each time we rebuild, we learn how to make them stronger. James smiled. Small, tentative, but real. Eleanor's heart nearly burst. What are you teaching, my son? Eleanor spun to find the Duke standing in the doorway. She hadn't heard him approach. He had a habit of moving silently, appearing like a ghost when least expected. Good morning, Your Grace. We're learning about architecture. It looks like you're playing with toys. Sometimes they're the same thing. Eleanor straightened, meeting his gaze. James is learning that failure isn't permanent. That's worth more than any formal lesson. The Duke's eyes narrowed. Mrs. Dawson tells me you took James to Hyde Park yesterday, without my permission. I informed Mrs. Dawson. I am his father, not the housekeeper. Eleanor's cheeks flushed. You were in meetings all day, Your Grace. The weather was beautiful and James needed fresh air. I apologize if I overstepped. The Duke stepped closer, and Eleanor caught the scent of bergamot and something darker, more complex. Next time you will wait for my explicit permission. My son's safety is not negotiable. Of course, Your Grace. He looked at James, who had gone very still, his small hands frozen on the blocks. Something in the Duke's expression softened, just slightly. Did you enjoy the park, James? The boy nodded silently. And were you well behaved for Miss Hartley? Another nod. The Duke crouched beside his son, and Eleanor saw the careful control in every movement, a man terrified of breaking the fragile thing in front of him. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself, but next time I'd like to know beforehand. Can you understand that? Yes, Papa. The Duke's hand hovered over James's curls, then dropped without making contact. He stood abruptly and strode from the room without another word. Eleanor released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. April melted into May, and Thornbury House began to change in ways Eleanor hadn't anticipated. James's laughter echoed through halls that had been silent for years. He ran to greet her each morning with bright eyes and eager questions. They read together in the library, painted watercolors in the garden, counted birds in Hyde Park. And the Duke watched. Eleanor felt his gaze constantly, from his study window overlooking the gardens, from doorways she hadn't known he occupied, during the dinners when James insisted Miss Ellie eat with them. Those grey-blue eyes tracked her movements with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. One afternoon she found James in the music room, staring at the pianoforte with longing. Do you play, James? He shook his head. Mama did. Papa won't let anyone touch it. Eleanor's heart twisted. Would you like to learn? Papa said, what if I asked him, would you like that? James's face lit up with hope so pure it hurt to see. That evening, Eleanor knocked on the Duke's study door. Her courage gathered like armor. Enter. He sat behind his desk, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, dark hair disheveled from running his hands through it. Papers covered every surface. He looked up, and something unguarded flashed in his eyes before the mask fell back into place. Miss Hartley, is something wrong with James? No, Your Grace, I wanted to ask permission for something. Go on. Eleanor clasped her hands to stop them trembling. James is drawn to the music room. He wants to learn piano. I could teach him. I'm reasonably accomplished. But I know the instrument belonged to your late wife, and I wouldn't presume to— No. The word fell like a stone. Your Grace, music is wonderful for children. It teaches discipline, creativity. I said no. He stood, and the movement held barely leashed violence. That piano belonged to Catherine. James will not touch it. This conversation is over. Eleanor should have left, should have curtsied and retreated. Instead, she heard herself say, Your wife would want her son to experience joy. The Duke's face went white, then red. You dare speak of my wife? You know nothing about her, nothing about what she would want. I know she was a mother. And mothers want their children to live, not exist as monuments to grief. Get out! Your Grace, get out before I dismiss you entirely. Eleanor fled, tears burning her eyes. She found James in the hallway, his face stricken. I'm sorry, Miss Ellie, I didn't mean to make Papa angry. Oh, darling. Eleanor pulled him close. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. But as she held the trembling child, she wondered how long she could stay in a house where the past held everyone hostage. That night she sat in her small governess room, packing her trunk. She'd been a fool to think she could help. The Duke of Thornbury was as cold and immovable as the marble columns supporting his mansion, and she'd overstepped so badly that dismissal was inevitable. A knock at her door made her freeze. "Miss Hartley." The Duke's voice, quiet and strained. Eleanor opened the door to find him standing in the hallway, still in his disheveled shirt sleeves, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. "Your Grace, I apologize for my presumption. I'll be gone by morning." "Don't." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of pure frustration. "Don't leave. James needs you. I see that now." Eleanor stared at him. "He smiled today. Did you know that?" The Duke's voice cracked slightly. "He was humming a tune from one of your stories while building with blocks. I heard him through the door. My son was happy. Do you understand what that means to me?" "I think I do, Your Grace. Alexander." The name came out rough. "When we're alone, you may call me Alexander." Eleanor's breath caught. "That would be highly improper. Everything about this conversation is improper. I'm standing in your doorway at midnight, asking you to stay because my son loves you and I—" He stopped abruptly. "Please, stay. Teach him piano. Bring life back to this mausoleum. Just don't leave." His eyes met hers, and Eleanor saw past the Duke to the man, lonely, grieving, desperate for connection he didn't know how to ask for. "I'll stay," she whispered. Relief washed over his features. "Thank you." He turned to go, then hesitated. "Miss Hartley, Eleanor, my wife would have liked you. She always said I needed someone brave enough to argue with me." Before Eleanor could respond, he was gone, leaving her standing in the doorway with her heart racing and her entire world tilting on its axis. This was dangerous, this feeling blooming in her chest. She'd lost everything once to love. She couldn't survive it again. But as she lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, she knew it was already too late. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning in May, engraved on thick cream paper. "The Viscount and Viscountess of Hartington request the honor of your presence at a charity ball. Black tie, 8 o'clock. Mrs. Dawson brought it to Eleanor in the nursery, where she sat reading to James. His Grace asks that you accompany young James to the ball. The boy should be seen in society, and you'll need to mind him during the evening." Eleanor's stomach dropped. "I'm sure His Grace would prefer a more experienced chaperone. His Grace was quite clear you're to go." That evening, Eleanor stood before her mirror in the only formal dress she owned, a pale blue silk she'd worn 3 years ago, before everything fell apart. It was outdated, the hem slightly frayed, but it would have to do. She pinned her dark hair into a simple chignon and descended to the entrance hall, where Alexander and James waited. Alexander turned, and his expression froze. "Miss Hartley, you look—" He cleared his throat. "Presentable." Such a cold word for the heat in his eyes. "Thank you, Your Grace." The Hartington mansion blazed with gaslight and champagne, full of London's most elite society. Eleanor kept James close as they entered, acutely aware of every whisper, every appraising glance. She was the governess. She didn't belong here. Alexander vanished almost immediately into conversations with other noblemen, leaving Eleanor to navigate the ballroom with a 5-year-old who clung to her skirts. "There's lemonade at the refreshment table," she told James. "Should we investigate?" But as they crossed the floor, Eleanor heard a voice that turned her blood to ice. Good heavens. "Is that Eleanor Hartley?" She turned to face Richard Pemberton and his wife Lavinia, the man who'd destroyed her and the woman who'd taken her place. Richard looked exactly as Eleanor remembered, handsome in a conventional way, with carefully styled blonde hair and ambitious eyes. But now those eyes held something else. Regret, perhaps, or merely curiosity. Lavinia, however, radiated pure malice. She was beautiful in the way expensive things are beautiful. Polished, perfect, and utterly cold. Her emerald silk gown probably cost more than Eleanor earned in a year. "Eleanor Hartley," Richard repeated, stepping closer. "I heard rumors you'd fallen quite far, but a governess. Truly." Eleanor forced her spine straight, refusing to show the terror clawing at her throat. "Mr. Pemberton, Mrs. Pemberton, how lovely to see you both." "Lovely?" Lavinia's laugh was sharp as glass. "Richard, darling, she thinks it's lovely. How quaint." James pressed closer to Eleanor's side, sensing danger. "And whose child is this?" Richard asked, eyes narrowing. "Don't tell me you've managed to trap some poor fool into—" "I'm James Blackwood." The small voice was quiet but clear. "Miss Ellie is my governess. She's the kindest person in the whole world." Lavinia's expression turned venomous. "Blackwood? As in the Duke of Thornbury?" "Yes, ma'am." "How perfectly predictable," Lavinia said, her voice carrying across the nearby conversations. Several heads turned, the desperate governess latching onto the grieving widower. "Tell me, Eleanor, are you warming his bed as well as teaching his son? Is that how you secured your position?" Eleanor's vision blurred with rage and humiliation. Around them, conversations died. The ton loved nothing more than a scandal, and Lavinia was serving one on a silver platter. "That's enough," Eleanor said quietly. "James, let's go." "Running away again?" Richard's voice dripped with false sympathy. "Some things never change. Still alone, Eleanor. Still without anyone to defend you." The words hit like physical blows. Eleanor had survived 3 years of whispers and speculation, but hearing it from Richard, the man who'd sworn to love her, was somehow worse than she'd imagined. "I defend myself, Mr. Pemberton, I always have." How exhausting that must be. Lavinia's smile was poison. To always be alone, to have no one who truly wants you. It's rather pathetic, isn't it, Richard? Richard had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Lavinia, perhaps we should..." "Should what? Spare her feelings? Why? No one spared mine when my husband spent our first year of marriage pining after his lost love." Lavinia's eyes glittered with tears and rage. "At least I have the consolation of knowing she's exactly where she belongs, invisible, unimportant, utterly alone." Eleanor's hands shook so badly she had to clasp them behind her back. She would not cry, would not give them the satisfaction. "Come, James," she whispered, "we should find your father." But before she could take a step, a presence materialized behind her, solid, powerful, unmistakable. A hand settled on her shoulder, warm and possessive. She will never be alone again. Eleanor's heart stopped. She knew that voice, knew the controlled fury beneath its surface calm. Alexander Blackwood, Duke of Thornbury, stood directly behind her, his hand steady on her shoulder, his grey-blue eyes blazing with cold wrath. The ballroom went utterly silent. "Your Grace," Richard stammered, bowing quickly. "We were just..." "Insulting Miss Hartley?" Alexander's voice could have frozen fire. "Yes, I heard. The entire room heard. You've made quite the spectacle, Mr. Pemberton, and you, Mrs. Pemberton, have revealed yourself to be exactly as petty and cruel as I suspected." Lavinia's face flushed crimson. "Your Grace, I merely..." "Miss Hartley is under my protection," Alexander said, each word precise as a blade. "She is a member of my household, entrusted with my son's welfare and education. Any disrespect shown to her is a direct insult to me and to the Duchy of Thornbury. Do I make myself absolutely clear?" Richard went pale. "Your Grace, I assure you..." "I don't want your assurances, Pemberton. I want you to understand that if I hear another word, another whisper, disparaging Miss Hartley's character, I will make it my personal mission to ensure every door in London society closes to you, both of you." The threat hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Alexander's hand tightened briefly on Eleanor's shoulder, then he moved to stand beside her, presenting a united front. "Miss Hartley has shown my son more kindness and genuine care in 6 weeks than most people show in a lifetime. She is a woman of exceptional character, and anyone who suggests otherwise will answer to me personally." Around them, the ton watched with avid fascination. This was the Duke of Thornbury, cold, distant, barely seen in society since his wife's death, publicly defending his son's governess. The scandal would fuel gossip for months, but Eleanor couldn't think about that, could only stare at Alexander's profile, at the muscle jumping in his jaw, at the protective fury in every line of his body. He was defending her, in front of everyone. Lavinia's composure cracked entirely. "You're making a fool of yourself, Your Grace. For a governess? Have you lost your mind?" Alexander turned his full attention to her, and Lavinia actually flinched. "I've found my mind, Mrs. Pemberton. Perhaps you should search for yours and your manners while you're at it." He offered Eleanor his arm. "Miss Hartley, James, we're leaving." Eleanor took his arm on instinct, her hand trembling against his sleeve. James grabbed her other hand, and together they walked through the silent ballroom, every eye following their exit. The carriage ride back to Thornbury House was suffocating with unspoken words. Alexander sat rigid across from Eleanor and James, his jaw clenched, hands fisted on his thighs. James had fallen asleep against Eleanor's shoulder, exhausted by the evening's drama. "You didn't have to do that," Eleanor finally whispered. "Yes, I did. You've created a scandal. The talk tomorrow will be..." "I don't give a damn about talk." His eyes met hers in the dim carriage light. "They had no right to speak to you that way. No right to humiliate you. It's not the first time I've learned to endure. You shouldn't have to endure it." The words came out fierce, almost angry. "You're worth 10 of Lavinia Pemberton. 100 of her. That man was a fool to let you go." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Your Grace, how many times must I tell you to call me Alexander when we're alone? We're not alone. James is here. James is asleep. And even if he wasn't—" Alexander dragged a hand through his hair, destroying its careful styling. "Do you have any idea what it did to me? Hearing them tear you apart like that? Seeing you stand there, trying so hard to be brave? I was handling it. You were drowning and I couldn't watch it anymore." The carriage lurched to a stop in front of Thornbury House. Alexander exited first, then reached up to take James from Eleanor's arms. The sleeping child didn't stir as his father carried him inside, cradling him with unexpected gentleness. Eleanor followed them into the house, her legs unsteady. Mrs. Dawson appeared to take James, and Alexander surrendered his son reluctantly. "Put him to bed. Miss Hartley and I need to speak." "Your Grace, it's late." "My study now." It wasn't a request. Eleanor followed Alexander through the silent house to his study. He closed the door behind them, and suddenly the space felt far too small, the air too thick to breathe properly. "You've compromised my reputation," Eleanor said, forcing the words out. "Defending me like that. Everyone will think—" "Let them think what they want. Easy for you to say. You're a duke, I'm a governess. One word of scandal and I'll never work again." Alexander moved closer, and Eleanor's back hit the bookshelf. "Then don't work. Stay here. Stay with James. Stay with—" He stopped himself, breathing hard. "Stay with you?" Eleanor's voice came out barely a whisper. "Is that what you're asking?" "I don't know what I'm asking." His hand came up, hesitated inches from her face. "All I know is that I can't stand the thought of you leaving, of James losing you. Of, God help me, of losing you myself." Eleanor's heart hammered against her ribs. "Your Grace, Alexander, you don't mean that." "Don't tell me what I mean." His eyes blazed. "I've spent 5 years telling myself I was dead inside, that I'd never feel anything again. And then you walked into my house with your gentle voice and your kind hands, and you brought my son back to life. You brought me back to life. You're grateful. That's all this is. Gratitude." "This isn't gratitude." He closed the distance between them, his body nearly touching hers. "This is agony. This is lying awake at night thinking about you down the hall. This is watching you with James and wanting, needing to be part of that warmth. This is remembering the way you looked tonight in that blue dress, remembering the fire in your eyes when you faced down those vultures, and wanting to—" He stopped, jaw clenched, clearly fighting for control. "Wanting to what?" Eleanor breathed. His hand finally made contact, fingers gentle on her cheek. "Wanting to kiss you until you forget every man who came before me, until you forget everyone except us." Eleanor's knees nearly buckled. "This is madness. You're a duke. You're the woman who makes my son laugh, who argues with me when I'm being an ass, who stands up to society's cruelty with grace and dignity I can't even imagine." His thumb brushed her lower lip, and Eleanor's breath caught. "You're the woman I can't stop thinking about, can't stop wanting. Alexander." His name was a plea, a prayer, a warning. "Tell me to stop, Eleanor. Tell me you feel nothing, and I'll walk away. I'll be the proper duke, and you'll be the proper governess, and we'll pretend this conversation never happened." Eleanor knew she should tell him to stop, should push him away and retreat to her safe, lonely room, should protect her heart from another devastating loss. But she was so tired of being alone, so tired of being brave. "I can't tell you that," she whispered, "because it would be a lie." Something broke in Alexander's expression, control shattering like glass. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't the careful, respectful kiss of a gentleman. It was desperate and consuming. 5 years of grief and loneliness poured into the press of his mouth against hers. Eleanor gasped, and he deepened the kiss, one hand tangling in her hair while the other pulled her flush against him. She should stop this, should remember her place. Instead, she kissed him back just as desperately, her hands clutching his shoulders, her body melting into his with a rightness that terrified her. Alexander pulled back with a ragged breath, resting his forehead against hers. "God, Eleanor, what are you doing to me? What are you doing to me?" She could barely speak. "This is impossible." You know that, don't you? We can't, why not? Because you're the Duke of Thornbury and I'm your employee, because society will crucify us both, because I've already lost everything once and I won't survive it again. His hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. You won't lose anything. I swear it. I'll protect you. You can't protect me from this. Tears burned her eyes. Don't you see? The moment we cross this line, everything changes. And when it ends, it won't end. Everything ends, Alexander. Everything good in my life has ended. My father died. My fiancée abandoned me. My entire world collapsed. I can't... Her voice broke. I can't give my heart to you only to watch you realize I'm not worth the scandal. Not worth the fight. His thumbs wiped away the tears on her cheeks. You are worth every scandal. Every fight. Every risk I've spent 5 years avoiding. You say that now, but tomorrow when the gossip starts, when your peers begin to question, when your family... I have no family except James, and he already loves you. That's not fair. Eleanor tried to pull away, but he held her gently in place. Using James to... I'm not using him. I'm telling you the truth. Alexander's voice dropped to a whisper. I'm telling you that my son smiles now because of you, that this house feels like a home because of you, that I feel alive for the first time in 5 years because of you. And I'm telling you that I'm terrified, Eleanor whispered back. Terrified of believing you, terrified of trusting this, terrified that I'm already in love with you and your son and this life, and it's all going to be ripped away just like before. Alexander went very still. You love me? Eleanor closed her eyes, unable to bear the intensity of his gaze. I didn't mean to. I tried so hard not to, but yes, God help me, yes. Silence stretched between them, broken only by their ragged breathing. Then Alexander spoke, his voice rough with emotion. I loved my wife. She was kind and gentle and good. But what I feel for you, it's different, fiercer, it burns. Catherine was the girl I married because it was expected. You're the woman I choose because I can't imagine a life without you in it. Eleanor's eyes flew open. Alexander, I know this is complicated. I know society will have opinions. But I don't care, Eleanor. I don't care about anything except keeping you here. With me, with James. Tell me you'll stay. Not as just a governess, not as someone I have to hide, but as... He hesitated, then pushed forward. As mine. The word hung between them, heavy with promise and danger. What are you asking? Eleanor's voice shook. I'm asking you to trust me, to give us, a chance to figure this out. No more hiding. No more pretending there's nothing between us. The scandal will destroy you. Let it try. His smile was fierce. I'm the Duke of Thornbury. I've weathered worse than gossip. Your son, our son. The words came out firm, certain. If you'll have us, if you'll take the risk. Eleanor looked into his eyes and saw her future, brilliant and terrifying in equal measure. She could say no, could protect herself, could live the rest of her life safe and small and alone. Or she could leap. Yes, she breathed. Yes, I'll stay. Yes, I'll risk it. Yes to all of it. Alexander kissed her again, and this time it tasted like hope. The morning papers arrived with breakfast, and Eleanor's hands shook as she read the gossip columns. Every society page carried some version of the same story. The Duke of Thornbury and his mysterious governess, the public defense, the speculation about their relationship. They're calling me your mistress, Eleanor said quietly, setting down the paper. They were in Alexander's study, a morning ritual that had developed over the past week. Coffee together before James woke, stolen moments of normalcy. They're calling you worse than that. Alexander's jaw tightened. I've already had 3 members of Parliament suggest I handle the situation before it damages my reputation. Maybe you should. His eyes snapped to hers. Don't you dare suggest I should let you go. I'm destroying everything you've built. Your position in society was built on loneliness and duty. You think I care more about that than I care about you? Eleanor stood, pacing to the window. You say that now, but when your peers start withdrawing invitations, when your business associates question your judgment, when this affects James's future prospects, then we'll face it together. Alexander moved behind her, close enough that she felt his warmth. I told you, I'm not letting you go. A knock interrupted them. Mrs. Dawson entered, her expression troubled. Your Grace, there's a gentleman here to see you. Lord Edmund Ashford, Eleanor's former employer. Her heart sank. Show him in, Alexander said, his hand finding the small of Eleanor's back. A quiet claim. Lord Ashford entered moments later, a kind-faced man in his 60s, who'd always treated Eleanor with paternal affection, but his expression now was grave. "Your Grace, Miss Hartley." He nodded to them both. "I apologize for the early hour, but I felt you should know immediately there are rumors circulating, ugly ones." "What kind of rumors?" Alexander's voice went cold. "About Miss Hartley's departure from my household 2 years ago. Someone is suggesting she was dismissed for theft. That she stole my wife's jewelry, and we chose not to prosecute out of pity." Eleanor's vision blurred. "That's a lie. Lord Ashford, you know it's a lie." "Of course I know." His voice was gentle. "You left because you wished to seek other employment. We parted on excellent terms, but someone has sent anonymous letters to half of London's society families, claiming otherwise." Alexander's fury was palpable. "Who?" "I don't know, but the letters are detailed. They include dates, descriptions of supposedly missing items. It's elaborate enough to be believable." Eleanor sank into a chair, her legs giving out. "This is because of the ball, because of what Alexander said. Someone wants revenge." "Lavinia Pemberton," Alexander said flatly. "This has her fingerprints all over it." Lord Ashford looked uncomfortable. "I cannot prove it was Mrs. Pemberton, but I can tell you that she's been quite vocal about her displeasure with your association." "Sounds to need to leave London," Eleanor said, her voice hollow. "I need to resign my position and disappear before this destroys James, before it destroys you." "No." Alexander's tone left no room for argument. "Alexander, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. You're being a coward." The word stung like a slap. Eleanor stood, fury replacing despair. "How dare you? How dare I what? Point out that you're running again?" He moved closer, eyes blazing. "That's what you do, isn't it? When things get difficult, you disappear. You accept defeat. You let people like Lavinia Pemberton win. I'm trying to protect you. I don't need your protection. I need you to trust me to handle this." Lord Ashford cleared his throat. "Perhaps I should leave you to discuss—" "Stay," Alexander commanded. "You can serve as witness. Miss Hartley is not being dismissed. She is not leaving. And anyone who suggests she's a thief will face legal action from my attorneys. Is that clear?" "Your Grace," Lord Ashford said carefully, "I support you entirely, but you must understand. The scandal is growing. If you truly care for Miss Hartley's welfare, you might consider removing her from London until this settles." Alexander went very still. "Remove her? Take her to one of your country estates. Let society exhaust itself with gossip while you're absent. Return when the talk has died down." Eleanor shook her head. "That's just hiding, running away." "It's strategic withdrawal," Lord Ashford corrected gently, "and it might save your reputation, both of your reputations." Alexander looked at Eleanor, something calculating in his expression. "Thornbury Estate, in Kent. It's been closed for years, but it's beautiful, peaceful. We could take James, escape this poisonous atmosphere." "We?" Eleanor's heart raced. "You, me, and James, as a family. Let London talk. Let them exhaust themselves. We'll be too busy living to care." "Your Grace," Lord Ashford said slowly, "that would be highly irregular. A duke and his unmarried governess, living together in the country. Then perhaps she won't remain unmarried for long." Eleanor's breath stopped entirely. Alexander turned to her, and in his eyes she saw determination and something that looked terrifyingly like hope. "Come to Kent with me, Eleanor. Give me time to court you properly away from all this venom. Give James time to adjust to the idea of you as more than just his governess. Give us a chance." "Alexander, you can't possibly be suggesting—" "I'm suggesting exactly what you think I'm suggesting." His voice softened. "I told you I wanted you as mine. I meant it. But I know you're afraid. So come to Kent. Let me prove this is real. Let me show you what our life could be." Lord Ashford coughed. "I'll show myself out, shall I?" Neither of them noticed him leave. "This is insane," Eleanor whispered. "Going away together. It's as good as admitting that we're in love." "Yes, it is." Alexander took her hands. "I'm tired of hiding, Eleanor. Tired of pretending. I want to wake up and see you across the breakfast table. I want to watch you teach James his letters. I want to fall asleep knowing you're down the hall instead of lying awake aching for you. Society will never accept it. Society accepted me marrying a merchant's daughter the first time. They'll accept this too eventually, especially if we give them a wedding to gossip about instead of a scandal." Eleanor pulled her hands free, wrapping her arms around herself. You're asking me to risk everything, again, and I'm not sure I'm brave enough. You're the bravest person I know. He moved closer, but didn't touch her. You survived losing everything and rebuilt yourself. You stood up to your demons at that ball. You face down a stubborn duke every day and don't flinch. You're brave enough for this. The question is, do you want it enough to try? Did she? Eleanor closed her eyes, thinking of James's laughter, of Alexander's rare smiles, of the life she'd glimpsed in stolen moments, warm and real and terrifyingly wonderful. Yes, she said finally. God help me, yes. I want it enough to try. The relief on Alexander's face was almost painful to witness. Then we leave tomorrow, pack light. Kent is informal, just us and James and whoever we need for propriety's sake. Mrs. Dawson? Mrs. Dawson would follow me to hell if I asked. She'll come. He finally touched her, fingers gentle on her cheek. We're going to be happy, Eleanor. I promise you. The journey to Thornbury Estate took most of the day. James sat between Eleanor and Alexander in the carriage, chattering excitedly about the countryside rolling past. Mrs. Dawson rode in a second carriage with the minimal luggage they'd brought. Will there be horses, Papa? James asked for the 10th time. Yes, darling. And sheep, and a lake where we can swim in summer. Can Miss Ellie ride horses? Alexander's eyes met Eleanor's over James's head. I don't know, can you, Miss Ellie? I used to. Before. She stopped herself. It's been a while. Then I'll teach you again. Or remind you. His smile was private, intimate. We have all the time in the world. When Thornbury Estate appeared on the horizon, Eleanor's breath caught. The house was smaller than the London mansion, but infinitely more beautiful. Honey-coloured stone covered in climbing roses, surrounded by rolling green hills and ancient oak trees. A lake sparkled in the distance, reflecting the afternoon sun. It's beautiful, Eleanor breathed. It was my mother's favourite place. Alexander's voice held old grief. She died when I was 12. After that my father couldn't bear to visit. I haven't been here in nearly 20 years. Then why bring us now? He looked at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes made her chest ache. Because it's time to stop letting the past haunt every corner of my life. Because I want new memories here, happy ones, with you and James. The carriage stopped, and Alexander climbed out first, lifting James down before turning to offer Eleanor his hand. When their fingers touched, electricity sparked between them. Welcome home, he said softly. And for the first time in years, Eleanor thought she might actually belong somewhere. The first week at Thornbury Estate was unlike anything Eleanor had experienced. Without London's rigid social structure, they existed in a strange, wonderful limbo. They took breakfast together in the sunny morning room, rode horses through the hills, Alexander patient, as he reminded Eleanor of forgotten skills, explored the estate with James, who seemed to grow more vibrant with each passing day. The servants were few and carefully chosen. Mrs. Dawson maintained her usual efficiency, but with a knowing twinkle in her eye. The estate staff treated Eleanor with respect that bordered on deference. Clearly they'd been informed that she was more than just the governess. And every evening, after James was asleep, Eleanor and Alexander would sit in the library or walk through the gardens, talking for hours. Tell me about your childhood, Alexander said one evening as they strolled beside the lake. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. There's not much to tell. I was an only child. My mother died when I was young, so it was mostly me and my father. He was kind but distracted, always chasing the next investment opportunity. Is that how he lost everything? Eleanor nodded. He meant well. Thought he was securing my future. Instead, he destroyed it. He gave you strength, though. Alexander's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. You could have crumbled when everything fell apart. Instead, you rebuilt. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. You chose dignity, courage. That's rare. They walked in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Eleanor gathered her courage. Tell me about Catherine. Alexander's steps faltered, but he didn't pull away. What do you want to know? What she was like? What you loved about her? I married her because my father arranged it, Alexander said slowly. She was the daughter of a wealthy merchant trying to buy his way into nobility. I was a young duke who needed funds to restore Thornbury House. It was a transaction that happened to involve a wedding. But you grew to love her. I grew to care for her deeply. She was sweet, gentle. She made me laugh occasionally. He stopped walking, turning to face Eleanor. "But I was never in love with her the way I'm in love with you. What I feel for you, it's consuming. It keeps me awake at night. It makes me want to be better, stronger, worthy of you." Eleanor's throat tightened. "I'm not worthy of that kind of devotion." "Then we're perfectly matched because I don't deserve yours either." He pulled her closer, and Eleanor went willingly. "But somehow we've stumbled into this together, and I'm too selfish to let you go, even though I'm afraid all the time. Especially because you're afraid. It means this matters to you as much as it matters to me." His hand cupped her face. "I'm afraid too, you know. Terrified I'll wake up and you'll have vanished. Terrified I'm not enough to make you stay. You're more than enough." The words came out fierce. "You're everything, that's what terrifies me." He kissed her then, soft and reverent, like she was something precious, and Eleanor let herself believe, just for a moment, that this could last. That happiness wasn't always temporary. They were so lost in each other that neither noticed the rider approaching until he was nearly upon them. A young man on horseback, out of breath, his face urgent. "Your Grace, I have an urgent message from London, from Lord Ashford." Alexander released Eleanor reluctantly, turning to the messenger. "What is it?" "The rumours about Miss Hartley, Your Grace. Lord Ashford has discovered proof of their origin. Forged letters, paid witnesses. He says you must return to London immediately if you wish to clear her name." Eleanor's heart sank. So much for their peaceful escape. Alexander's expression hardened. "Who was behind it?" "Mrs. Lavinia Pemberton, Your Grace. Lord Ashford has documented evidence, but he says you must act quickly before the damage becomes permanent." Alexander looked at Eleanor, and she saw the Duke emerge, all traces of the vulnerable man replaced by cold, calculating fury. "Prepare the carriage. We leave at dawn." "Alexander, wait. No more waiting." His voice was steel. "No more running. No more letting them win. Lavinia Pemberton tried to destroy you, and I'm going to make sure she never threatens anyone again." The tenderness of moments before had vanished, replaced by something far more dangerous. And Eleanor realized that falling in love with the Duke meant accepting his power, and the ruthlessness that came with it. They returned to London in a storm of preparation and barely controlled fury. Alexander spent the journey back drafting letters, consulting with his solicitors, building his case against Lavinia Pemberton with the precision of a general planning a siege. Eleanor watched him work, seeing a side of the Duke she'd only glimpsed before. Ruthless, powerful, utterly uncompromising. Part of her should have been frightened. Instead, she felt something close to awe. This was the man who'd built an empire, who commanded respect through sheer force of will, and he was doing all of it for her. "You're staring," Alexander said without looking up from his papers. "I'm appreciating." That made him smile. "Appreciate me later. Right now, I need to destroy someone's reputation." "Is that really necessary?" Eleanor asked quietly. "Can't we just present the truth and let it speak for itself?" "The truth rarely speaks loud enough in London." Alexander set down his pen, giving her his full attention. "Lavinia Pemberton tried to ruin you. If I let that stand, what message does it send? That anyone can attack you without consequence? That my protection means nothing? So this is about your pride?" "This is about justice." His voice hardened. "And yes, about pride. She challenged me publicly, tried to destroy the woman I love. I won't let that stand." The confrontation took place at the Ashford residence 3 days later. Lord Ashford had arranged a dinner party, intimate by London standards, only 20 guests, carefully selected from the most influential members of society. Lavinia and Richard Pemberton arrived fashionably late, unaware they were walking into an ambush. Eleanor stood beside Alexander in the Ashfords' drawing room, her hand tucked into the crook of his arm. She wore a new dress, deep sapphire silk that Alexander had commissioned, insisting she look every inch a duchess to be. The weight of every eye in the room pressed against her skin. "Your Grace," Lavinia said when she spotted them, her smile brittle. "How unexpected to see you in London. I thought you'd fled to the country." "Fled?" Alexander's tone was pleasant, conversational. "No, Mrs. Pemberton, I've been gathering evidence." Lavinia's smile froze. "Evidence of what?" "Of your campaign to destroy Miss Hartley's reputation through lies and forgery." Alexander's voice carried through the room, ensuring everyone heard. "Shall I present my findings to our assembled friends, or would you prefer to confess privately?" Richard stepped forward, face pale. "Your Grace, surely there's some misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding, Pemberton. Your wife hired witnesses to claim Miss Hartley stole from the Ashford household. She forged letters supposedly documenting the thefts. She spread malicious rumors designed to destroy Miss Hartley's character and employability. Gasps echoed through the room. Lavinia's face drained of color. "That's absurd," she said, but her voice shook. "I would never—" "I have the receipts from the witnesses you paid." Alexander produced a folder from inside his coat. "I have the original forged letters, which my handwriting expert has confirmed came from your personal stationery. I have testimony from 3 separate individuals who heard you boasting about your plan to teach that presumptuous governess a lesson." Lavinia swayed on her feet. Richard grabbed her arm, his expression horrified. "Why?" Eleanor heard herself ask. "Why did you hate me so much?" Lavinia's composure shattered completely. "Because you ruined everything. Richard was supposed to forget you. You were supposed to disappear. But he never stopped talking about you. Never stopped comparing me to you. Eleanor would have said this. Eleanor would have done that. I was just the rich replacement for the woman he actually wanted." Richard's face went scarlet. "Lavinia, that's not—" "Don't lie to me." Tears streamed down Lavinia's face. "You've been in love with her this entire time. Even now, even seeing her with the Duke, you can't let her go. So yes, I tried to destroy her. Because if she was ruined, maybe you'd finally see me." The silence that followed was devastating. Eleanor almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Your motives, while pathetic, don't excuse your actions," Alexander said coldly. "You attempted to destroy an innocent woman's livelihood and reputation. You will publicly retract every false accusation. You will write letters of apology to every family you spread rumors to, and you will never speak Miss Hartley's name again. Am I clear? And if I refuse," Lavinia's voice was barely a whisper, "then I will pursue legal action for defamation and fraud. I will ensure every door in London and beyond closes to you. I will make it my personal mission to see you as ostracized as you tried to make Miss Hartley." Alexander's smile was ice. "Test me if you like. I have unlimited resources and a very long memory." Richard stepped between them, his face desperate. "Your Grace, please. I'll ensure Lavinia complies with your demands. Just don't—" He looked at Eleanor, and she saw genuine anguish in his eyes. "She's right. I never stopped thinking about you, never stopped regretting what I did, but I never wanted you hurt like this." "Then you should have controlled your wife," Eleanor said quietly, "and you should have let me go completely instead of holding on to ghosts." "I know. I'm sorry. For everything." "Your apology is 3 years too late," Alexander said flatly. "But if it helps you sleep at night, you're welcome to it. Now get out, both of you. And remember, one more word against Miss Hartley, and the full weight of the Thornbury Duchy comes down on you both." Lavinia fled the room in tears, Richard trailing helplessly behind her. In their wake, the assembled society lords and ladies erupted in whispers. But Eleanor didn't care anymore. She'd faced her demons and won. Lord Ashford raised his champagne glass. "To Miss Eleanor Hartley, a woman of exceptional character who has weathered storms that would have destroyed lesser souls." The room echoed with agreement, glasses raised in Eleanor's honor. And Eleanor, standing beside the Duke of Thornbury, finally allowed herself to believe she was safe. The proposal came 2 weeks later, in the least expected place, the music room at Thornbury House. James sat at the pianoforte, picking out a simple melody Eleanor had taught him. The instrument that had once been forbidden now rang with life again. Alexander stood in the doorway, watching them with an expression so tender it made Eleanor's chest ache. "That's beautiful, James," she said, adjusting the boy's fingers on the keys. "Now try it again, but softer this time. Like this? Perfect." She kissed the top of his head. "You're a natural." "Miss Ellie," James said suddenly, his small face very serious, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, darling. Would you—" He glanced at his father, then back at Eleanor. "Would you ever want to be my mama? Not just my governess, my real mama." Eleanor's throat closed. "James, because Papa says he wants to marry you, and I want that too. I want you to stay forever and ever and never leave." Tears blurred Eleanor's vision. "Did your papa put you up to this?" "Actually," Alexander said, stepping into the room, "James came to me. Said he'd been thinking very seriously about our family situation, and he'd decided you were already his mother in every way that mattered. He asked when I was going to make it official." James nodded vigorously. "Papa's been very slow about it." Has he? Eleanor couldn't help smiling through her tears. Very slow, James confirmed. Mrs. Dawson says he's being obtuse. I don't know what that means, but it sounds bad. Alexander knelt beside the piano bench, taking Eleanor's hand. Then perhaps I should rectify my obtuseness. Eleanor Hartley, you have brought light back into this dark house. You've given my son joy. You've given me hope. You've taken every cruel thing life threw at you and emerged stronger, kinder, more beautiful than anyone has a right to be. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife, of being James's mother, of letting me spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice? Eleanor looked between them, the man she loved and the child she'd come to cherish as her own. Yes, she breathed. Yes to everything. Forever. Yes. James whooped with joy, throwing his arms around both of them. Alexander pulled them close, and for a moment they were just a family. No titles, no scandal, no society's judgment. Just love. There's one condition, Eleanor said when they finally pulled apart. Alexander's eyebrows rose. Condition? We get married quickly, before I lose my nerve. He laughed, a real, genuine laugh that transformed his whole face. I think that can be arranged. The wedding took place 6 weeks later at St. Paul's Cathedral on a snowy December morning. Eleanor had argued for something smaller, more private, but Alexander insisted. I want everyone to see. Want them all to know you're mine. Want there to be no question, no doubt, no room for gossip. Now standing in the cathedral's vestibule in her ivory silk gown with delicate lace, Eleanor's hands shook. You look like a princess, James said solemnly. He wore a miniature version of his father's formal attire and carried the wedding rings with intense concentration. You look very handsome yourself. Mrs. Dawson appeared, her eyes suspiciously bright. It's time, my dear. Are you ready? Was she? Eleanor looked down the impossibly long aisle, saw Alexander waiting at the altar in his ducal finery. The cathedral was packed. London society in all its glory, come to witness the scandalous governess marry the reclusive duke. She thought about the girl she'd been 3 years ago, broken, humiliated, certain she'd never trust again. She thought about the woman she'd become, scarred but stronger, brave enough to risk everything for love. I'm ready, she said. She walked alone down the aisle, refusing offers of male relatives to give her away. She belonged to no one but herself, until she chose to give herself to Alexander. Every eye followed her progress, but Eleanor saw only the man waiting at the altar. Alexander's expression when he saw her nearly undid her completely, awe and love and fierce possession all at once. When she reached him, he took her hands, and Eleanor felt the tremor running through them. You came, he whispered. Did you think I wouldn't? I was terrified you'd realize you deserved better. There is no better, Eleanor whispered back. There's only you. The ceremony passed in a blur of ancient words and sacred vows. Eleanor heard herself promise to love, honor, cherish. Heard Alexander's voice crack slightly on, till death do us part. And when the priest finally said, you may kiss your bride, Alexander pulled her close and kissed her with an intensity that made the congregation gasp and then break into spontaneous applause. Eleanor didn't care that it was improper, didn't care that duchesses weren't supposed to be kissed quite so thoroughly in public. She was exactly where she belonged. The reception at Thornbury House was magnificent. Hundreds of guests filled the ballroom. Champagne flowed like water, and music filled every corner. But Eleanor only had eyes for her husband, strange, wonderful word, and their son. James danced with her first, his small feet carefully following the steps she'd taught him. You're my mama now, he said happily. Really and truly. Really and truly, Eleanor confirmed, her heart so full it hurt. Then Alexander claimed her for a waltz, and the rest of the world fell away. Happy? He murmured against her ear. Terrified, ecstatic, overwhelmed. That sounds about right. He pulled her closer than propriety allowed. I love you, Eleanor Blackwood, Duchess of Thornbury. I love you too, even though you're utterly mad for marrying a former governess. I'm mad for you, there's a difference. They danced until the sun set and the candles were lit. Danced until Eleanor's feet ached and her face hurt from smiling. Danced until it was just them, the last guests having finally departed. Come with me, Alexander said, taking her hand. He led her to the music room, where James's pianoforte sat silent in the moonlight. This is where it started, Eleanor said softly. where James asked me to be his mother. This is where I realized I couldn't live without you." Alexander turned her to face him. "I was standing in that doorway, watching you with my son, and I thought, this is what home feels like. Not the house, not the title. You, this, us." Eleanor kissed him, pouring 3 years of loneliness and fear and hope into it. "Take me to bed, husband." His eyes darkened. "With pleasure, wife." 2 years later, Eleanor stood in the gardens of Thornbury Estate, her infant daughter Caroline sleeping in her arms. Spring had transformed the Kent countryside into an explosion of colour. Daffodils and roses and wild bluebells carpeting the hills. James chased butterflies through the flowers, his laughter echoing across the estate. He was 7 now, confident and happy in ways that would have seemed impossible 3 years ago. "I could watch this forever," Alexander said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around them both. Eleanor leaned back against his chest. "We have forever now, do we? Well, at least 50 or 60 years. Maybe more if we're lucky." He kissed the top of her head. "Lucky doesn't begin to cover what I feel. Blessed, grateful, unworthy. You're plenty worthy, and I'm the lucky one. How do you figure?" Eleanor turned to look at her husband, this man who'd defended her, fought for her, loved her through every fear and doubt. "Because I was drowning and you pulled me out. Because I was alone and you gave me a family. Because you kept your promise." "What promise?" "That I would never be alone again." Alexander's eyes grew suspiciously bright. "You'll never be alone again. I promise that every day for the rest of our lives." Caroline stirred in Eleanor's arms, tiny fingers curling around her mother's dress. James ran over, grass-stained and grinning, demanding they come see the frog he'd found by the lake. And Eleanor looked at her family, her husband, her children, her home, and knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. The governess who'd lost everything had found something infinitely more valuable. She'd found love. She'd found home. She'd found herself. And she was never, ever going to be alone again.